I honestly feel like Henry Cavill cannot catch a break.
One of your hobbies, and he's got a lot of them, ladies and gentlemen. One of your hobbies is you paint.
Makes me sound weird.
Well, you do have more hobbies than the average man, I'd say. But you paint. Is it World of Warcraft?
Warhammer.
Warhammer. I'm a fool.
It's Warhammer, Greg.
Welcome back, my dualies. So the rumor is that Henry Cavill is considering leaving the Warhammer 40K production at Amazon.
Allegedly, I should say that for legal purposes.
And if the rumors are true, it's due to creative differences.
This will be the second time this happened to Henry Cavill, which is pretty crazy.
If I had a nickel for every time I was doomed by a puppet, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right?
Yeah, it's The Witcher all over again.
There does seem to be a weird cycle when it comes to Henry Cavill. A cycle where studios want to adapt a nerd franchise, so they hire Henry Cavill because the nerds know that he'll do right by the lore and he's handsome and famous. And that attracts general readers that would never have known about the series otherwise. And then the show generates hype, and the studio decides to disrespect the lore because they think they bought enough goodwill through hiring Henry Cavill. Cavill does the thing that you hired him to do and defends the lore, and when that doesn't work, ends up leaving. Then the show fails as the nerds check out, the audience forget the show even exists, and then another studio sees Henry Cavill's available and hires him to elevate their nerd franchise. And the cycle just seems to continue. It's like the studios don't understand that the thing that fans love about Henry Cavill is the passion that he brings to it, the integrity that he brings to these projects. And so he's not going to betray that. So hiring him to try and mask things that you want to make happen makes no sense. And it actually makes it more obvious because when he leaves, it means that the differences were so irreconcilable that it did actually undermine the source material. It goes to show the idea of having principles just eludes these people.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean you stand by what you say? No, we say things and then we go back on it. That's how we run this place. So as we all know, Henry Cavill's a pretty big fan of Warhammer and pretty strict adherent to lore.
The easy answer is Warhammer 40,000. That is my jam. I have been into it since I was 10.
What's your army at the moment?
Custodes.
And this rumor popped up after it came out that Games Workshop would be making a pretty substantial change to the Warhammer 40K lore. Games Workshop dropped the bomb that they were going to now have female Adeptus Custodes. It's largely being speculated is about placating Amazon, because obviously Amazon has this Warhammer 40K show, and they want more female characters. The reason this is unnecessary is because there's actually tons of female characters in Warhammer 40K. As you'd expect, this has become an internet hot point. The argument isn't one side saying women should be allowed in 40K and some other side saying women should be kept out of 40K. The argument is that we already have factions of powerful women with their own unique backstories and traditions that are crucial to the lore of 40K. Why do you need to change their lore and add women to a completely different faction in which they do not exist? And the other side saying that if you don't, it's because you're mean.
And you guys, this isn't new. We saw this happen with The Witcher. And then we saw it happen with Rings of Power. And then we saw it happen with Fallout. Now it's just 40K.
Yeah, these type of debates inevitably bring people to the table that actually have no interest in the material at all, whether it's the source material or even the upcoming show. They just want to use it as a stomping ground for them to make their point. And that's the problem. There's no good reason to change the lore.
No.
There's plenty of representation. There's plenty of awesome characters to be adapted and put into the Warhammer show as is. But it wouldn't have the effect that they want. And they want to pick a fight. They're hoping that they can turn this into a bigger issue and say, hey, look how terrible this fan base is.
Well, and they're targeting people who don't know the lore.
Yeah, and they're hoping that they can elicit anger, but the stance of people who know the lore is not anger. It's just not a thing.
Yeah.
It's as casual as that. They want to make it seem like it's people screaming, being like, you can't have women in 40K. It's not. It's just people being like, they haven't been part of that faction. Like, they're not in that cadre. So just put them in the correct cadre. The only people that have expressed a problem with women so far is Amazon, who didn't like the depictions of women in 40K.
So Amazon, what you got against women in 40K?
And if the rumors are true, the reason that they want the female characters to be Adeptus Custodes and not Sisters of Silence or Sisters of Battle kind of tells you everything you need to know. So the reason that Amazon doesn't want to have the female characters be the Sisters of Silence is because they don't like the optics of women not speaking, which is ridiculous because warrior monks that take vows of silence are pretty common in fantasy. And it kind of indicates who they're trying to make this show for, which isn't Warhammer fans. And as far as the Sisters of Battle being too religious and them being worried that that might be off-putting, again, Warhammer is filled with a lot of stuff about religion. So if this is true, they're trying to market Warhammer 40K to an audience that just doesn't exist. One that likes the idea of Warhammer, but has significant problems with the actual root lore and mythology in the 40K universe.
And what makes things worse is they're not even admitting that it's a retcon. Someone asked Warhammer, why did you make female custodians? Warhammer responded, since the first of the 10,000 were created, there have always been female custodians.
Which obviously is a retcon because it completely contradicts their own codex, where it said, it is known that all custodians begin their lives as the infant sons of the noble houses of Terra. It is a mark of incredible privilege to surrender one's child to this most glorious of callings within the Imperium. And many noble clans among the Terra aristocracy have willingly given up almost entire generations of newborn sons to her.
So right there, twice, they specifically said sons.
And again, you can say, well, the codex has been updated because it's in the 10th edition that they've made these changes. And I think that if they had just handled this better, there probably wouldn't have been the backlash. Yeah, you'd still have some people who are pissed because it is a retcon. But it's the gaslighting that pisses people off. It's the pretending that it's not a retcon. And it's also the fact that this 100% seems like Amazon has to check certain boxes and wants to have female custodians and said, Games Workshop, just go and write it into the lore so that we can point to it and say, look, we're being lore accurate, which, as you know, we've talked about a lot on this channel. That's something that people who aren't really fans of the lore tend to do. They tend to go either change things, look for loopholes, or hold up like a single issue of a comic to try and justify the changes that we all know they wanted to make from the beginning. And what a lot of people are upset about, and what is not being talked about, is if they're saying that they don't want to represent women as the Sisters of Silence, that seems to be an admission that you're not going to see those groups in the Warhammer 40K show
At all.
because they think they're problematic. And so you're actually trying to convince people that in order to be more inclusive, you need to wipe out two huge groups of female characters with their own history and lore. This whole thing gives me real J.K. Rowling vibes. Do you guys remember when J.K. Rowling was asked why there wasn't enough representation in the Harry Potter books? And she just started making stuff up. Things that she took no time to actually build into the original books. Things like Dumbledore being gay, or characters being black or Jewish. And none of those things are a problem, except she didn't put in any work to make those characters that way in the first place. It was just a weak attempt to respond to external pressure. And it just seems like that's the same thing that's happening right now with Games Workshop, with Amazon putting pressure on them to change the lore, to be able to tell the story that they want.
I honestly feel like there are people being sucked into this as a cultural issue when it really is quite simple. Amazon were told they need to add women to the custodians for optics reasons to get their investment money, and they asked Games Workshop to retroactively add it to the lore so they could hide behind it being a Games Workshop decision rather than them changing the lore. So you're not fighting for equality, but for a giant corporation whose only motivation was to access more investment.
Allegedly, I should say that for legal purposes.
That said, I actually don't think they'll follow through with this. It would just be such a death kiss. We all know what Henry Cavill leaving The Witcher did to that show. There's no way Amazon's looking at this if Henry Cavill is considering leaving, thinking, yeah, we'll be able to survive that. It will suck all the life out of this show.
It does seem like there is a Hollywood Illuminati that lurks in the shadows, waiting for Henry Cavill to bring interest to an IP he loves just to run him off.
I actually don't think that this will lead to Henry Cavill leaving. I think this whole thing's going to blow over because it really is a controversy without merit. Because in order to believe that there are people trying to keep women out of 40K, you have to ignore the fact that there are already women in 40K. So I do think cooler heads will prevail. And I think that we'll actually see a pretty good 40K show because I don't think Henry Cavill is going to let them turn this into some disaster.
At least we hope not. But these are just our thoughts, you guys. Let us know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to subscribe, like this video, and we'll see you later. Bye.